Welcome to Chronicles by Candlelight. Subscribing helps the channel grow and lets you stay updated with every new video, so you never miss the content you enjoy. You are listening to Fracture, Episode 6, The Ascension Games. There was no way this was happening. I'd just arrived at Aetherium, and it felt like I might already be on my way out. Whispers around the hall continued to spread as everyone came to terms with the rules of survival. All across the rows of seats, students leaned toward each other, comparing ranks and quietly calculating their chances. I looked towards the Nintendo kid. He was sitting on the row to my right, beside Jasper and the blonde girl, and was the picture of calm on a stormy night in the ocean. He had to be ranked in the top 50, maybe even 20, my gut told me. From what I could see from my seat, Jasper burned red with excitement. And the blonde girl? Well, I couldn't get a read on her yet, but she had to be strong to hang out with those two. Boy, they are a different breed, I muttered to myself. What was I going to do? I was dead last, and to make matters worse, I had the combat ability of a fawn. Dean Allthrough raised a hand and the murmuring slowly died down. Now that you have all seen your current standing, his voice was calm and controlled. It is time you understand how those standings will change. The large screen behind him flickered to life, displaying a grid of information that stretched across the stage. The combat department operates on a competitive semester lasting 16 weeks, he continued, pacing slowly across the front of the stage. During that time, your ranking will change based entirely on your performance in sanctioned combat matches. A ripple of attention moved through the hall. Competition occurs in cycles, he went on, each lasting 2 weeks. The display shifted and revealed a schedule. Every cycle begins with a challenge window, which takes place on Monday and Tuesday. During this time, students may formally issue challenges. More text appeared on the screen. However, there are restrictions, he added. I leaned forward slightly in my seat. You may only challenge opponents within 50 ranks, above or below your own position. A low murmur spread through the hall as people began doing the math in their heads. For me, that calculation was painfully simple. If I was rank 500, the highest opponent I could challenge would be rank 450. Dean Allthrough continued without pause. Matches themselves take place between Wednesday and Friday of each cycle. All fights are recorded, supervised, and officially logged by the Institute. The screen shifted again. Every student must participate in at least one match per week, and no student may fight more than twice within that same period. Additionally, you may not challenge the same opponent twice within a single 2-week cycle. Another wave of whispers passed through the crowd. And students within the highest ranks will have limited rights to decline excessive challenges, he added. This ensures that the upper tier of the rankings remains competitive and does not collapse into chaos. His expression hardened slightly. At the end of the semester, the bottom 20 students in this department will be removed from the Institute. This time the reaction was louder. Dozens of conversations sparked at once, spreading across the massive hall like a sudden storm. My chest tightened. Ranks 481 through 500 were as good as gone if they couldn't gather enough points through battle. Allthrough gestured toward the screen again. Now we come to the point system. The display changed, revealing a long column of numbers. Each rank corresponds directly to a point value. Rank 1 begins with 500 points, while rank 500 begins with 1 point. A student near me let out a quiet whistle. I'd hate to be ranked 500, he said. I bowed my head in shame. The outcome of every match results in a transfer of points between competitors, Dean Allthrough continued. Specifically, the winner gains 10% of the loser's current points, rounded down to the nearest whole number. The room grew noticeably quieter as people processed that. This meant even if I beat rank 450, I would only be awarded 5 points. At this rate, I needed to win all 2 of my fights from now till the end of the semester. My chances of escaping expulsion kept getting further and further out of reach. Points earned outside of battle are capped at 3. Allthrough said, and are given at the discretion of your educators. Finally, good news. I wasn't a good fighter, but I was smart. But it would mean I'd have to manage good grades till the end of the semester. Even then, it wasn't a guarantee points would be given by each and every educator. Because rankings are tied directly to points, he continued. The order of competitors will update immediately after each recorded match. Furthermore, there are, of course, additional regulations governing the challenge system. The screen behind him shifted again and revealed another list of rules. Students within the top 20 ranks may only accept 1 external challenge per week, he said. A ripple of whispers spread through the hall. Furthermore, challenges issued between members of the top 20 may only occur once per cycle. That made sense. Otherwise, the highest ranks would just endlessly fight each other and destabilize the system. Dean Allthrough clasped his hands behind his back again. He had an evil smile on his face, like he enjoyed the panic. All of these rules exist for one reason, he said. To ensure that your progress through the rankings remains competitive and that you work diligently throughout your time at Aetherium. Your current ranks and point totals are now available through your online student pages, he concluded. You may review them at any time. The giant screen behind him faded back to the Institute's crest. Welcome to the Ascension Games, he smirked. A low wave of conversation immediately filled the hall. Over my shoulder, a student with blonde hair looked at me out of the corner of his eye. Same thing happened to my left. Until a few minutes ago, they had just been strangers sitting in rows of chairs. Now every single one of them was a potential opponent. My eyes drifted across the hall slowly, until I caught the sight of Oars, sat several rows ahead and slightly to the side. He turned halfway in his seat as he scanned the room with a sadistic grin spread across his face, and the moment our eyes met it widened. God, he must be a lunatic, I muttered. He raised one hand and dragged his thumb across his throat in a slow slicing motion. The message was clear enough. I was dead meat. Of course he wanted to challenge me first. He had been itching to fight me for quite some time now. However, the system only allowed fights within 50 ranks, and there was no way Oars was sitting anywhere near the bottom 100. Which meant, for now at least, he couldn't touch me. The induction hall had started to settle into a steady hum of quiet conversations when the large doors at the side suddenly opened. I didn't even notice someone had come into the room until the murmurs began. An elderly man with a sharp black beard against a dark suit walked into the room. Apart from how expensive the suit looked and that he wore shades inside, there was nothing particularly peculiar about him. Yet the murmurs only increased as the seconds passed. One of the staff members standing near the stage hurried toward him. It was the same thin man with grey hair and glasses who had checked me in at the entrance. He leaned close to the old man and whispered something quickly. Then he raised his hand and pointed directly toward the back rows toward me. My stomach dropped. The old man turned his head slowly in my direction, and even behind the dark glasses I could feel his attention land on me. The hairs on my arms stood up instantly. The sharp copper tang of adrenaline flooded my mouth, and static in my brain drowned out all my thoughts. I looked away. Any longer and I would have wet myself. There was no way he was normal. It was the same ominous feeling that washed over me when I met Jasper, but on steroids. The whispers all around the crowd got so loud I could hear everything they were saying. Is that him? Someone asked. It can't be. No way, another said. That's actually him, Slade Baldwin. The name, Slade Baldwin, moved through the rows like electricity. Who was he? I frowned. I had never heard the name before, yet he seemed to be the most important person in the room. The old man began walking toward the stage while the staff member followed closely behind him, speaking quietly the entire time. Sorry. I turned to the guy beside me. Who is that man? Are you kidding? He asked. Are you an NPC or something? That's one of the founders of the Aetherium Institute. Seriously? I asked. Him? But he's not on the school's founders page. Who is this guy? Someone sat beside me butt in. Everyone knows that it is because he is a member of the Diamond Assassins. The Diamond Assassins? I had heard stories about them on Reddit pages and comment sections, but never actually gave them any real thought. They were an elite group of fighters whose strength supposedly rivaled magical beasts themselves. People said each member had survived battles that ordinary assassins wouldn't even attempt. Were they telling me the old man slowly making his way to the stage had once been one of them? As he reached the front of the hall, Dean Allthrough stepped forward to greet him immediately. Students, he announced, and raised a hand for silence. It appears we are fortunate today. The hall quieted almost instantly. Allow me to introduce one of our founding fathers, the man responsible for the continued success of Aetherium Institute. He gestured respectfully. Dr. Slade Baldwin. A wave of excitement swept through the hall. The old man stopped at the center of the stage, and for a moment he said nothing. Then, without warning, a suffocating stillness filled the room, like a void that sucked the heat from the marrow of my bones. My breathing ceased, and every survival instinct in my body screamed, "If you move, you die." Chairs scraped loudly across the ground as shrieks flew through the air. Suddenly my legs folded as I dropped from my seat and hit the floor along with dozens of other students. It was the same ability Oars used on me earlier, except this one made me want to crawl into my own skin. This was something else entirely. And it didn't only work on me. All around me, students groaned and scrambled to push themselves off their feet. I forced my head up. Then something strange caught my eye. Not everyone had fallen. Across the massive hall, a number of students were still standing. Roughly 200 of them, give or take. Jasper, Nintendo Boy, and Oars were among them. They stood alert, bodies tense, and eyes locked onto the stage as if they were ready to fight at any second. Why had they reacted differently? I wondered. I struggled back to my chair, feeling the effects linger in my legs. Was this some kind of telekinetic ability? No, it wasn't likely, because what I felt did more than just push me to the ground. It was as though he held a blade to my jugular. I stared at the old man standing calmly at the center of the stage. So this was the power of a man whose strength rivaled a magical beast? Subscribe for new episodes. See you next time.